Okay, well, here we are, David Hart here from the G4 Guitar Teacher Network, calling this G4 Guitar TV tonight. What we're going to do is I've got Trevor here in the UK. Trevor's really just starting his guitar teaching business, and he's quite excited because he's got his second student inquiry today, or enrolment, and he's really just kicked off, and in all that he's getting married and lots of other things are going on, so he's really doing a great job of pulling it together. So what I'm going to do in this session is I'm just going to work with Trevor, and we're going to go through some of the challenges that he will have, either perceived challenges or challenges that I'm going to throw at him that he's going to have to deal with as he gets started. And the idea is really to use this as for any other teachers who are starting out, to use it as a platform to try and learn and pick up quickly. So Trevor, I'll throw it to you first. What do you think right now, looking from your perspective, is going to be a challenge, or some of the challenges that you're likely to face?
I'm guessing probably been asked questions in lessons that I haven't thought of the answers for. I don't have answers ready and waiting. I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of things that are going to crop up that early on that I'm not necessarily going to know. Okay, what do I do with that? So it's going to be a case of having to say, look, let me get back to you with that one. It's a great question. I will give you an answer for it, but let me check on it first, sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah, I think probably confidence as well. I guess that's probably something that comes with time. The more students you're teaching, the more you sort of get into your, it's like performing, I suppose, isn't it, really? When you're teaching in lessons, you're sort of up there doing the thing, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. So early on, yeah, probably a little bit of nerves, I guess. But
Yeah.
The more you do it, the more you're going to get comfortable with it, I guess.
Yeah, and I think really, that confidence thing, it will come with time, just as you get to know what's what and how it all works. Having a system, obviously, of teaching is going to help you, but there's nothing that equates to the real thing when you're going to be there with students in front of you and having to answer questions and be organised and know what comes first, what comes second, and you're going to make mistakes as well. So, when you have kind of problems or issues, being kind of nervous, it's going to be, it'll make it a little bit harder. So what we can do is we can try and role play it a little bit and see if we can't come up with some scenarios that you're likely to face in these early lessons. So let's just say for you, let's just go through your very first lesson,
Okay.
and yeah, give you an idea what's going to happen there. So we'll start off with, I know you've got a couple of students who are going to start, but let's start with the child, for instance. So let's say you've got and I won't ask for any details based on the students you've got now. I'll just sort of come up with a make-believe situation. So let's just say that you've got a 10-year-old child. They're coming for their first lesson tomorrow. What have you got prepared for them now?
What would I have prepared right now at the moment? So
Yeah, well, even if we say it's next week, what will you need from what you understand so far? What will you need to give them and ready?
okay, so obviously I've got their student pack, teaching pack all ready for them. I'd
Yep.
probably have a copy of the parent's guide as well for the parent, who hopefully will be sitting in on the lesson. I'd have a probably 3/4 size guitar available for them to practice with in the lesson.
Yep.
Obviously, I'd make sure that the practice studio is clean and everything's all, sort of hunky-dory and spick and span.
Yep.
It's probably about everything I can think of at the minute.
Yep. Excellent. Okay, great. So the other thing that you want to do, and you've got all the things that you need there, which is great. You've got it. What you want to do is actually run through the scenario. Imagine your student is there. Actually, go and sit a pillow or something on the chair and pretend it's a student, and sit how you're going to sit and where the student's going to be, and just get a real feel for how it's all going to work. just so that you know whether or not you're going to have problems straight away, because it's quite surprising that when you get into the zone, when you start to think, oh, actually, I'm not going to be able to see the student properly from that thing. And I've had a few teachers who have done this, where I've actually had them in their studio with their camera, and I've asked them to show me where they're sitting and how they're sitting and what's going on. And one of the classic mistakes that they make is that if they've got like a child and a parent, then they often put the parent in a position where the parent can't see what's going on. So they might put the parent in a chair over to the side, behind the student, etc. But we really want the parent to see what's happening. So your ideal situation is to create kind of a triangle so that you can see the student and the parent equally, and you can face both of them. Because often in that first lesson especially, and the younger the child, then the more you're going to have to kind of engage them and keep them in the game, so that the parent knows what's going on and how you're going to be teaching to them, what kind of things that you want them to know. These are really important. So just had Jay join. Jay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me, Dave?
I can hear you. Fantastic, Jay. Welcome.
Thanks.
We've got Trevor here in the UK as well.
Hi, Jay.
Jay's in the UK. Trevor.
Hello.
So what we're doing here, Jay, just to bring up to speed, is that we're talking about Trevor's just starting out his teaching, so we're going through the scenario of how to sort of work with that first student and go through that first lesson and the kind of things that you need to be aware of. And I might even get you, Jay, in a minute to throw in some ideas as well based on your experience. So if we I'll just finish this and then I'll bring you into the conversation, Jay. So, for example, in that first lesson, I will want the parent, let's say that it's mum or dad sitting there in the chair, and I've got little Johnny, the 10-year-old, sitting in the chair. I want mum and dad to understand what I need little Johnny to do. I want them to be able to see his hands, see his fingers, to be able to see the book and the folder and everything, and understand how it all works. So when they're at home, they're going to be managing them, because if you leave it to a child, especially a young child, to do it themselves, it won't get done. It's just, it's almost a law of physics that you give a child something to do without any parental supervision or help. It's very unlikely to be done unless it's something that's like watching TV or playing a video game, or those kind of things that kids don't need any push or motivation to do. So when it comes to actually learning, because learning is actually quite taxing, it takes a lot of energy, and this has been shown in quite a number of studies where the frontal lobe actually requires quite a lot of energy to learn something new, and that's why we fatigue very quickly, and children fatigue very quickly, because they actually have a smaller frontal lobe. The way the brain develops is it develops from the back, which we call the reptilian brain, comes through to the monkey brain, through to the front, which is our adult brain. And for most adults, that doesn't fully develop until we're sort of in our mid-20s. And so when you take a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old and you give them lots of things to concentrate on through the learning process, it gets very tiring for them. They do, and then they want to go off and do something else. And that's where the parent comes into it, because the parent has a higher degree of concentration, can focus longer. So with the child, you're going to be coming in and out. You can sort of teach them for a minute or two, absorb that, great, well done, give me a high five, bang, and then you go to mum and dad and say, look, what do I need him to do at home is do this, 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 and this. Is that okay? Does that make sense? And the parent goes, yeah, no, I got it, great, fantastic, or I need you to help with that. Okay, good. And then you come back to Johnny and let's go for another 2 minutes on another exercise. And so you're sort of coming in and out from parent and child, and that way you're not sort of overloading the child, and the parent is absorbing the information that they need at home. And you can also explain this to the parent, explain that try to do it in short bursts. What you want to do is start off small, just even a very short practice session to begin with, just 5 minutes. Let's just sit down for 5 minutes, day one. Day two, let's see if we can do a little bit longer, 6 minutes. They can let it go longer if it feels okay, but don't push it. Let parents know that you don't have to do a 20-minute or a half-an-hour practice session the first day, the second day, the third day, just to ease into it, get them used to the routine. The routine is really the main thing. We're trying to build up that habit and routine and keep it positive as much as possible.
Because
So,
presumably a sort of half-hour block of half-hour lesson for a 7-year-old, that's probably going to be quite a lot, isn't it? I mean, I'd be presumably from what you're saying, I should try and break that up and do sort of 5 or 10 minutes, and then have a little break maybe or something, and get them to do something else for a little bit maybe. I mean,
yeah,
yeah. I mean,
absolutely, yeah. Go on.
Just really is like one of the things. Not having kids of my own, it's like sort of okay. So what exactly do you do? For a 7-year-old to kind of, do you kind of? It's difficult to know what level to pitch it at. Do you like sort of, come on, let's go and throw a frisbee around in the garden or something like that, or what sort of things do you do really?
To break it up, yeah. What you kind of need to do in those situations is try and look around at things like the morning kids shows, and see the way that they actually interact with kids and the kind of things that they do, because these programs are based on child psychology. They actually put a lot of research into these shows, and they test the shows on young kids to see which ones they respond to and which ones they don't. And they will often make 3 or 4 or even more episodes of kids shows, and they will say which one. We'll put a bunch of kids down in front of them, and we'll see which ones get their attention and which ones they drift off with, and actually even watch their eyes, measure their eyes, and in the old days they had a pen and paper, but these days they're using computers to do it even. And so it's quite sophisticated what they do behind a lot of these shows. Sesame Street was really the first TV show that did that. They actually were the first show that I'm aware of from a study that I read about, where they brought in child psychologists to actually plan out the way the show and the format worked. And that's why Sesame Street was really the most successful TV kids show for many, many years. And I know I watched it, I'm 47, and it was around when I was a kid. I think it sort of came out about the time that I was very, very young. And so if you watch those kind of shows, then you get an idea. And because for you, Trevor, because we both have that Japanese connection, in Japan they have some great shows. If you're in Japan, when you are in Japan, switch on the TV in the morning around 7 o'clock onwards, and from about 7 through to about 10 o'clock, I think, it's pretty well all kid shows. You don't want to watch the cartoons or the animations. You want to watch the shows where they actually sometimes have dress-up characters. There's one guy called Shimaggio, and he's like a lion, and he's very popular, very famous in Japan with the young kids. And what he does is he teaches the kids how to do things. It could be anything from, funnily enough, going to the toilet and all these kind of things that, how to eat, how to get dressed, how to wash. So he's actually, in his shows, he's teaching the kids how to do things, but he's doing it in a fun way. But Shimaggio is a character, so maybe not the kind of the best example, but you'll see other shows where there are real people who are working with real kids, and you see that the way that they're not just like, okay, come on in, sit down. It's not like an adult. You're not talking to an adult. If I'm with a kid, I'll go, hi, big eyes, big kind of facial movements, and come on in, and very friendly, and keep it like the Wiggles almost, how are you, great. If you talk to an adult like this, they think you're a bit of a fool, but when you talk to children, they like it. I don't mean being inauthentic, and that's important, that we're not what we want to be genuine, but what you want to do is seem excited, seem that you really enjoy what you do. And the best way to seem like you enjoy what you do is actually enjoy what you do. Have fun with it, go with it, and those kind of things. Just little things too. If you have some things in your studio that are kid-friendly, that creates a more kid-friendly atmosphere. So if you can think about having some, posters or even a couple of balloons can make a difference. Kids love balloons. You don't have to have them there all the time. They're the kind of things you can go, well, I've got a young kid coming for the first time. You could get some balloons, some G4 guitar balloons, and give the kid a balloon. whether it's blown up or not blown up doesn't really matter. But having things like that, you know, we've got the character Jerry and his sister who's coming soon as well, which will probably be Grace. You know, you can have a couple of posters up of them. We can even have a different cover for the kids' folders that has Jerry on the front of it. So these kind of things, and really try and do a little bit of research behind it. Watch, like I said, some of these shows and see what little kids are into and what they like, and how you should behave around the kids. So, does that give you some clues? Yeah.
Gives me some clues, yeah. Just like a couple of practical examples. I mean, if you were teaching a 7-year-old and you can sort of see they're drifting off a bit, you know, obviously being a parent, what would give me an example of what you would do in those sort of situations?
Okay, excellent. If I've got, and I go through this every night because I'm teaching my 5-year-old, and you know, she'll go from being interested in it to sort of dazing off. So what I'll do sometimes, let's say I'm teaching her, like what we do is we alternate. Like we do guitar one night and then we do drums the next night, because she likes the drums actually more than guitar. So it's kind of like, well, we have to do the guitar. That's part of what we do. But on every second night we can do the drums. So we do drums and we sort of set it. And at this stage we're not using sticks or anything. We're just using hands and doing all the rhythm stuff, which is great. So we'll be there and we do say like a paradiddle, right, left, left, you know, that kind of thing. And then she will start to sort of do that, and she'll do it a few times, and then you'll start to see her get a bit bored and frustrated or not really want to do it anymore. And so I then say, okay, let's turn some music on. What song would you like? And then that sort of brightens her up again. So if you're going to have a music player there with you, then that's something that you can play some music and say, let's just have a listen to a music for a minute. Let's do some dancing. Okay, stand up, and you can get them to sort of move around, dance around. Okay, great, high five, bang, and then okay, sit down again for me. Now we're going to do something else. And so that's just one thing. Another thing is that I do with Mia, which she really loves, is I have on pieces of paper and I'm going to make this up, by the way. This will be part of the G4 package. It is on each thing. What I do is I just write something to do. So it could be like play a song from the PGM book. It might be do a picking exercise for 2 minutes. It could be play, you know, a G chord or a D chord or you know, whatever. It could be play a song. So I have all these things on the sheets, and what I do is I get her to pick them out of the. I've got like a kind of a little bucket thing, and I get her to pick them out of there, and she picks it out, and on each one it's got a point. And what we do every night is that she's got to get 10 points to finish her practice. So each time she pulls one out, then we do about half the practice like that. In other words, half of her practice is done pulling out of there, where she gets to choose the thing that she wants to do. Now I can actually choose what goes in there. So I know that, okay, these are the things I want her to do to practice today. So I put them in there, and then I get her to pick them out. And then she picks one, and then we do that as a skill, then she gets a point. So she feels like it's a bit of a lucky dip. She's pulling out the lucky dip, she gets to pick it out.
She doesn't realise it's rigged, though.
Say again?
She doesn't realise it's rigged, though.
That's right, it's a rigged game. You got it. Yeah. Oh, she's been set up from the beginning. That's right. She's kind of half onto it, because she sort of sometimes says, "Can I write one? Can I do one?" You know, and put it in there. And so I actually let her do that. I let her write one out and put it in there. So it's her kind of, there's one in there floating around of her choice. But yeah, so that's you know, in the parent guide, there's quite a few games in there, different things that you can play and apply. And these are the things that you want to be telling the parent. But the delivery is really important. So when you're working with kids, if you can really deliver it in a kind of an upbeat way, be animated, because kids really pick up on that. You know, even adults pick up on it, but kids especially pick up on it. If I sit here like now and go, "Yeah, guys, what do you want to chat about today? Yeah, what's your problem? Talk to me about what's going on." Man, all right. Well, yeah. What are we gonna? Oh, I don't know. I'm bored. What are we gonna talk about? So if I'm like that, then you guys aren't going to really be very engaged. you're going to go to sleep on me in the next 2 or 3 minutes if I keep on that way. And it's the same with your students. And when you're presenting to your students, it's like a performance. Think of it like, let's use the classic example of the guys behind you, Kiss. They're the ultimate performers. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, when it comes to great performers, those guys do it like nobody else. And so that's why they're so successful, because they're such great performers. They knew that right from the beginning, that they had to go out there and do a show that just blew people away. They weren't going to go out, they couldn't do anything less than blow people away. And if you take that same approach to your teaching, don't go in with this idea that it's all about where to put your fingers and how to pick, and or your policies, or how to pay. You got to pay your fees on time. You got to turn up each week, or you got to for your practice log in. All this stuff. Sure, this is all part of your business, but this is not what will make you successful. What will make you successful is your performance. If you put on a great show each week consistently, guess what? They want to come back week after week. And this is why I did group teaching, and this is why I endorsed group teaching, because I couldn't keep the level of energy up for 40 hours a week of teaching. I just don't have it. Nobody does. We can't keep that intensity up. But if you do groups and you condense them down into 10 students an hour and just teach for 4 hours or 5 hours a couple of days a week, guess what? You can give them full-on energy. You can go out there and really give them heaps, and they get a much better experience, and they come out of your lessons on a high, because they're only there for half an hour. For you, yeah, you're there for 4 or 5 hours, but they're there for half an hour, and they want to get a lot out of that. They don't want to be thinking that, I used to feel sorry when I used to work the long shift. I felt really sorry for the students who came towards the end of my shift, because I was tired. It was like 9 o'clock at night. I've been teaching since, I've been out of work since lunchtime, and here it was like 9 hours later, sometimes even longer. I've been sort of 10 or 11 hours at times. And I was tired. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, what do you want to do? You want to learn another riff this week? Oh, God, here we go. So I really, that's where I'm all about group teaching, because you can really deliver a lot of energy. You hear private teachers will say things like, oh, but you can give the student what they want. You can give them that real one-on-one personal attention. Yeah. But if you're really tired and you don't have the energy, and let's face it, you're only going to be able to give them the energy if you teach no more than 20 hours a week. 20 hours a max, if you're going to deliver high energy lessons, is about the best you can do. So that's what you're looking for. Group students, build your classes, and give them a great show. Really deliver, because then they'll walk out of there pumped. They'll practice. They'll be keen to come back next week. They'll want to be in your classes every week. If you had seen my studios in the peak, they were like nightclubs. And I'm not joking. This is no exaggeration. They were like nightclubs. I had a waiting room full of parents and siblings. Sometimes up to 30 people at a time, who were literally squashed in, lined up out the door. And then I had the students who were the rock stars, and they were sort of coming out, giving them high fives. Brilliant guys. This is excellent. Walk them out into the waiting room, and it's kind of noisy. Parents are talking. Everybody's, and I'm just saying, I'm sort of looking at a parent and pointing to their child and saying, Jerry did really well today. He's really been working hard on that reading. I'm very proud of him. Keep it up. I know, Mum, you're helping him, and I'm really grateful for that. Great guy. And then I'd sometimes address the whole crowd, if you like, and I'd say, thank you everybody for coming. Next week, same time, same channel. Make sure you guys practice. We've got the top 3 coming out next. We add up the scores next week for the end of the month. We're going to collate who are the top 3, so go hard this week, and let's see who can get in their top 3. Have a good week, guys, and I'll see you next week. So I would do things like that, or I would, sometimes come out and say, look, if any parent's got any questions, feel free to ask me. I've got a couple of minutes while these guys are setting up, and then maybe one parent or 2 parents would come up and say, yeah, I've got a question, blah, 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 blah. You've got to be a star of your show. You've got to be the main performer, the main act, and that they're coming there for the excitement as much as they're coming to actually learn how to play guitar, because that's what gets us into the whole thing in the first place. We go to a concert, or we watch Idol, or whatever these are. It's the music business. This is why they want to play guitar. They're not playing guitar just because they're not playing it usually as much as we'd love to just be playing for the pure enjoyment of music. Generally, that's not what gets people started and motivated. It's the whole idea of I can be a rock star. I can be somebody special by
Yeah.
playing.
I want that private Learjet and everything. Yeah.
I want the screaming crowds. I want the Beatlemania. Look, we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the Beatles. Let's face it. The Beatles were really the band that started this whole thing going. Before that, guitarists just sat in bands and really were in the background. It was the singers and the dancers that were up front. But then the Beatles came along with their guitars. Elvis and then Hendrix and Clapton, and these guys got the whole thing going, and that's where the whole guitar craze came. Guitar took over. Before that era, guitar was really not that important. Guitar was just something that jazz and classical players were really doing. There's some popular jazz players around, but it wasn't anything like when the Beatles hit.
Definitely.
So, okay, cool. So let me bring Jay into the conversation here. Jay, I know that you teach. You've got your own son as well. Have you got any tips for teaching, let's say, the first lesson? Anything that especially with kids?
First of all, I haven't taught anyone younger than 7. Yeah, but
Okay.
anyway, I got a student here who's already 7, but still behaves like a lot younger than that. So what I do is always include her mom into the conversation. I make sure that this student of mine is positioned in such a way that everything that I show her, her mom can also see, and yeah, and I do a lot of facial expressions, and I would exaggerate my expressions a little bit, open my eyes a little bit wider, and yeah, move my eyebrows a little bit. I kind of learned this from CBBS show here in the UK. Like I don't know if you know Mr. Tumble. Do you know him, Trevor?
I don't watch CBBS, I must admit. I'm going to have to start. I'm going to have to start watching some of these.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch a lot of these shows over the coming months as my wife's gonna give birth again to a boy. So I'll have no choice but to watch these CBB shows again, and I'll just take it as training as well. Yeah, that's all I can I can share about how I handle my youngest student at the moment.
Excellent, Jay. Great. You kind of really just reinforced the things that I was talking about even before you came online. So that's great, and you can see Trevor. He's saying much the same things. About exaggerate the facial expressions, involve the parent, let the parent see what's going on. So
I guess because I have sort of briefly met the child that I'm going to be teaching, and Mum says she's really like 7 but going on 17. She's quite I have met her, she's quite a kind of mature 7-year-old, if you know what I mean. So I'm a little bit wary of, I don't want to go in there and be pitching it to a level where she's going to start kind of rolling her eyes and going, oh my God, what's wrong with this guy? He's talking to me like I'm some sort of 3-year-old or something, So it's kind of, it's just, I don't want to underpitch it as well, if you know what I mean, and end up making her feel like I'm patronising her or something like that.
Yeah, you've got to know your audience. You can't be pitching. And sometimes this is where teachers get in trouble. Sometimes is they sort of get further down, through their teaching, where they're teaching adults and they're still in child mode. They're still thinking, have you done your practice log? Let me have a, and like, hang on, I'm an adult. I'm not a child. Don't treat me like a child. But in this case, it still applies. Is that you don't want to be looking at TV shows for 4-year-olds and applying that same kind of thing to a 7-year-old. I'll just add one thing that I just thought of a minute ago as you were talking, which is a really good thing to do, and I do it with Mia quite often. And I even remember my guitar teacher doing it to me, but in a kind of a slightly different way. But what I do with Mia sometimes is I say, okay, this next exercise, it's actually for 7-year-olds. Do you think you want to try it? Because it's for 7-year-olds. And she says, yeah, I want to try it, But it's for 7-year-olds, it's hard, it's really hard. she says, no, I want to try it. I want to try it. So she'll do it, and then I'll shake my head and go, wow, that's unbelievable. How old are you again, Mia? And she'll go, 5. And I'll say, but that's for 7-year-olds. You're playing like a 7-year-old. And she goes, feels all good and proud. So you always, you can sort of, it's called framing. And basically, if you've got a 7-year-old that you're teaching here, you can do it, obviously, say, well, look, this is normally, you don't have to play it like I did then because I was pitching it at a 5-year-old, but for a 7-year-old, you could be a bit more mature and go, look, this particular exercise, or what I'm going to ask you to do here is not easy, and it's normally what I would give a 10-year-old, but I just want to try you on it for a minute and see how you go. And then you give the exercise, and then they really want to try it, they want to do their best at it, and then when they do the exercise, make sure that it's within their capabilities, then they feel really good. And that builds their confidence, because a lot of what you want to do is build confidence, because as you build confidence, then they're going to do better. Yes, Ben?
A playing strategy is very similar to that, but they're a bit easier for newer students, because when you haven't already got a good idea of what they do, using that might be quite a problem if you then just give them something too hard. So obviously you're not going to aim to give them stuff that's too hard, but you can't do this every time you introduce a new concept, so something for early on. Or would you try and use the same thing early on, just slightly?
Yeah, you'll be surprised how often you can use it. And there's different ways of using it. That is just one example. There's many ways of using it. For example, like he was, Trevor was talking about 7 going on 17. It doesn't have to be about the guitar. It can be, come in and go off 7. Trevor can sit down and say, how old are you? And she's 7. Wow, I would have thought you were 9 or 10. You can do it in other ways, and that makes her feel good because that's what she wants. She wants people. If she's 7 going on 17, she wants to be older, and she wants people to think that she's mature. That's really what it's about. So by giving her some credit there, without being, don't be inauthentic. You've got to be careful with these kind of things, of course. But she wants to be taken seriously. She doesn't want to be treated like a little kid. If you went the other way, it could be insulting. If you say to her, I'm going to give you the young beginner course, which is normally for 5-year-olds. So let's have a try of this. If you can do this, okay, then we'll look at. She might find that quite patronising. So I wouldn't do that. I would go straight to the junior program, and I wouldn't even say anything about age. And just say, look, this is the junior program. You're 7, so you're really at the age for this. Let's just have a look at it and see how we go. And then at the end of the lesson, you can say something. This is another example where I might say, look, normally for a 7-year-old, I've just asked you to start off on 10 minutes a day. But for my older students, I say 20 minutes a day. But because you're only 7, I'm happy if you do 10 minutes a day. But then what they do is they come back the next week and they've done 20 minutes every day, because you've subtly thrown in there that for my older students, they do 20 minutes. So I want to be mature and older, so therefore I'm going to do what the mature and older kids do, and I'm going to do 20 minutes a day. And that happened a lot. Or I'd give them an exercise and I'd say, this is normally what I would give to an older child. You can have a look at it. All I expect you to do this is because of your age group. All I expect you to do is this. If you go beyond that, then great. But this is all I expect of you, because that's where normally 10-year-olds would be going. And so these kind of things. You constantly. What you're doing is you're constantly laying these little things in front of them, giving them bait and saying, "Are you up for this?" I'm just going to put it here for you. It's up to you. I'm not going to force you to or tell you have to do it, but if you can do it, then that's really going to prove something to me and to yourself. And so they take that bait often and they do it and they come back. And when we're not trying to manipulate them. We're just trying to persuade them into being the best, stepping up. Going being the best you can be. Don't sort of limit yourself. Don't sit in your little 7-year-old box if you think you can do better. Make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's actually what one of my students was doing. I've got a 7-year-old who's practiced almost every day, but 20 minutes every day. And then in the most recent lesson, he said, My mum didn't let me practice for half an hour yesterday, and I was like, oh no, definitely go for it. So I'm gonna be like, anything he's willing to do, go for it, as long as he's not in pain. Let's see how hard I can get them, and I can share some of the other people's top high scores, so I can go, look, some people are doing this.
Yeah, yeah. Just say, look, when his fingers start bleeding, Mum, tell him to stop. No more. So here's I just want to bring Jay into this because Jay hasn't. Jay's come today, and I asked him to come today because I want to try and go through some of the things he's got. Jay, what's a challenge or something that you've got with teaching young children or children, even the 7-year-olds? You know, I know you haven't done younger than 7, but what are some of the challenges you've had, or students that have dropped out, or anything that we can sort of have a chat about?
Yeah, like you said, you mentioned earlier, you know, their minds tend to, you know, drift away fast, really quick. They get bored so easily, and I can notice sometimes that with my son and that student of mine, that young girl, I can see their eyes rolling around and indicating that they're becoming bored. With my son, there's no problem because you know, in our culture from the Philippines, you know, our way of bringing up children is, you know, a little bit more like a dictator. Yeah, that's part of our culture. That's the way I've been brought up. So that's the way I'm bringing up my child. But with my students, it's kind of, you know, I need to adjust a little bit, you know, because I am here in the UK. I need to treat them the way that is normal and ethical here in the UK.
Yeah.
Yes, but that is my challenge. You know, they really lose focus a lot. And another thing is, you know, as I've heard before and read somewhere that, you know, the children their muscles are not as much as developed as, you know, adults. They tend to get a lot of difficulty in doing things. For example, when fretting the C chord, the first finger tends to not to stand up enough in such a way to clear up the E string. Yeah, and that takes a while to get them to do properly.
Okay, cool. All right. This is good because the things that you're saying there are both actually connected. In that, you know, where they lose concentration, they get distracted. And here's the interesting thing with children. A lot of adults have this idea that young children can't concentrate. They you know, it's almost as if it's a given in society that we think that a 4-year-old or 5-year-old, that they can't focus for very long on anything. But that's not true. You stick a young kid watching a TV, watching their favorite TV show, they'll sit there for hours and not move. They'll be frozen, and you know that, Jay, because you're a dad. So the thing is that the reason they actually get distracted or can't concentrate is because they don't feel that they can do the task. They're actually moving away from something that feels like it requires hard work. Jay, can you just mute your mic because I'm getting some buzz there? That's all. If you mute your, and I'll talk from there. So, okay, maybe that's Trevor. Trevor, can you mute yours too?
Yeah, sure.
Oh no, it's gone now. Okay, no, it must have been Jay. Okay, so what happens is if you're asking a child to concentrate on something and they don't like it, then their response is to look bored or distracted. Bored is really just a reaction to say, I don't like what I'm doing. I don't like my situation. I want something else. I want to be entertained. I want to go and do something that's fun. I want to watch the TV. I want to eat sweet stuff. Whatever it is, children, that's their strategy. That's what they know that works. Because the reason it works is because parents usually respond to it. Adults generally respond to a bored child. We think that when a child is bored, that we have a kind of almost a responsibility to give them something. So they learn that strategy very quickly. And so when you're in a classroom and you've got kids there who are sort of rolling their eyes and this is boring, Can't we do something fun? Then you feel, I better change what I'm doing. I better do something different because these kids are getting bored. So I need to excite them and get them interested. And it is half right. I'm not going to say that you completely ignore them. But at the same time, what you want to be doing is still getting that buzz there. Trevor, I might get you to mute your mic anyway because you're the last one there. Okay, great. So what we want to do, the strategy here is that we want to keep them interested, but we also want to stay on course. So we don't want to lose what we're teaching them, but we want to keep it fun. So how do we do this? This is the real challenge for you. Now, part of it I've already covered, which is about being animated, keeping it fun. But the other thing that often goes unsaid is to keep them busy. There's nothing better than keeping them from getting bored than keeping them busy, keeping them moving forward. Don't let them stop to think about what they're doing too much. Don't let them sort of get into that zone of being bored. What happens is that when, like Mia will do it all the time, where I'm getting her to play the, she goes, this is too hard, this is hard, or oh, it's boring, or I don't like it, I don't like guitar, all these kind of things. And so I go, I know, let's go, 1, 2, let's keep it going, come on, let's go, we're almost there, 1, 2, just another 10, another couple of bars for me, go 1, 2, and I'll just keep it going. And so she'll sort of pep up and go, and then if I go a little bit longer, then she starts to be okay with it, and she's okay again for a couple of minutes, and then she starts to get a bit bored again. And so I'll give her a quick break, and then I'll go okay again, and I'll switch. I'll do a lot of sort of switching between different things. I'll put, like I said earlier, I don't know if you caught it, but and you can say to parents too, I'll have music with some of her favourite songs on there, and then I'll just whack on the music, and I'll go, all right, let's just strum along to the music, okay? Let's just try and play, and that gets her all excited and pepped up, and bang. Once I've got her up and going again, I'll switch the music off, and I'll go, okay, play that G chord again for me, or play that D chord, or do this exercise or that exercise, and then she might go back, but I want the music, blah, blah, blah. I know, we're going to get to it in a minute. So I really keep it going, and we spend about half an hour most nights, and I really treat it a bit like an aerobics class, if you like. It's up tempo. So I really say, all right, let's do it. And if she's really not in the mode, I'll get her to stand up and run around the room. I'll go, okay, let's do it. Let's run around the room, bang, bang. And I'll race her. I'll go, okay, let's race to the bedroom. Let's go. And we race to the bedroom. And then jump on the bed. And then, okay, let's go back. Let's race back again. Okay, good. All right, so let's see who can do the picking exercise. This picking exercise the quickest. Let's go. Bang. And that's it. Good. Okay, put your thumb down there. Brace. That's the weight. So I really get her into a state where she's excited. And with your groups, when they're all sitting there and they're bored and whatever, all right, guys, put your guitars down. Stand up. We're going to do, we're going to play a bit of a game. Are we ready? Okay. All right. I want to see who can sit down the quickest, pick up their guitar the quickest, and get it ready for me and play the first picking exercise. Who can do it the quickest? Go, go, go. All right, 1, 2, 3, bang. When you do this kind of thing and you get the excitement going, then it becomes a lot more fun for them. It's a game. It's no longer boring old exercises. You're building up to the game. So does that make sense, everybody? Is that good? Yeah, you can just nod. That'll do it. So and this is, again, I come back to the idea of teaching group, and it's what I said before. If you're teaching privately, it's very hard to keep up this level of energy for that period of time. So by teaching groups, you're going to be able to keep up the energy and really keep it going. And that's where the format, as with the G4, you can have lots of different formats, but that's just the format that I'm recommending, which worked for me. And by having that 5 minutes, intro, doing the picking, etc., get your class started, maybe answer some questions, and then 10 minutes skill, in 10 minutes skill, 5 minutes on a song at the end or whatever you want to do, then that, if you do that all the time and you're consistent, you really get into the habit of it. You get to know to play that game. It's the 5-10-10-5 game. And the kids know it, and they know that they're going to switch over to another skill, and you say to them, look, guys, we've only got 10 minutes, we've got 3 minutes left on the clock. Let's make this last 3 minutes really, really last. Go. Who can do this? Bang, bang, bang. And so you really keep the tempo up, and then in the middle, you can have a 60-second break. All right, let's just have a break. All right. Whew, that was good going, guys. Fantastic. All right, so we're going to start it again in a minute. Just take a rest, have a chat between yourselves if you want. All right, let's go, we're on again. So you really play it as a game, like like going and playing a soccer game for half an hour or whatever, indoor soccer or indoor cricket or something, just something full on for that 30 minutes. Does that help, Jay?
Yeah. Yes, Dave.
Okay, excellent. You really, this is the thing that I find is missing mostly from teachers is that they don't see it as a performance. They see it as teaching. They can't actually get their head around that they're no different to what I was talking with Trevor about KISS. KISS pack out huge auditoriums worldwide any night of the week, anywhere in the world, because they put on a great live performance. That's why. And if you put on a great performance, guess what? You're going to be packed out. People are going to be lining up to come to your classes. You don't have to be the world's greatest guitar player. KISS aren't the world's greatest musicians. They can play their instruments, but they are not the world's greatest musicians, and they know that, and even their fans know it. But they're very hard to beat when it comes to a performance. They put on a great performance. I'll go and see them just for a performance. I'll certainly take my daughter to go and see them sometime when they're in town, because it's a good performance. It's fun, it's exciting, it's different, and especially in their day. These days there's a lot of different acts around, but when they came out, they were quite remarkable. So you want to be a remarkable teacher, and you want to really step up and be that performer. And that's really, when people say to me, what was your secret? How did you get so many students? Why were people booking in, literally booking in 10 new students a day? Why was that happening? It was because I saw it as a performance. And this is not just me. My brother is even better than me at this sort of stuff. My brother, he's almost 50. He's going to be turning 50 in a year or so. He's performing. There's a band in Australia that were called the Party Boys, and they were big in the 80s, and they were kind of one of the big bands going around. And they used to go to the pubs, and used to do the huge pubs that have these packed out crowds, and they'd have touring, guitarists from around the world who'd come and play with them, etc. And all the top. They have different singers who were from famous Australian bands. Anyway, he's got those guys playing with him now as musicians, and Steve's up front. Now, Steve only recently got back into it, maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. We used to play in bands a lot when we were in our 20s, but he had a break and went and did TV for a long time, and now he's back doing it. And now he's packing out pubs in Sydney, literally selling out before the doors even open. And because he puts on such a great show. He's not even doing anything original, he's doing cover songs, but he knows that it's about the show. And people go there for the show and for his energy, and he's like a combination of Freddie Mercury and John Bon Jovi and Mick Jagger and all these guys in Elvis. He's sort of a combination of all these guys in one. And he just really knows how to put on a show. He's also an actor, so he does a lot of drama and performance. So if you want to sell and you want to be in front of people and you want to teach groups of people, treat it like a performer. Trevor, I'm buzzing really badly. Okay, so all right, so great. Ben, have you got anything you want to add here? Any questions, or as far as I know, you're only fairly new to this. Teaching your first student, what was that experience like? What did you learn from it?
Well, definitely in retrospect, too much content. I've been slowly building my strip. You learn the patterns as you do it, and the 5-10-10-5 is something I've always aimed for, but obviously you don't want to just get halfway through teaching one chord and stop. And sometimes I'm finding, for example, a pattern of picking an 8 and chords and then arpeggios and scales, and then in lessons 3 and 4 you do the rest of the skills and then hopefully start on a song. That hasn't happened once yet. I'm going much slower through them, and I'm wondering whether I should take the song earlier, maybe do 2-3 skills, show the song, the chords in a song, even though they haven't learned all the chords yet, just to shake up the structure a bit so that I'm getting them a bit more involved in that 5-week intro. But specifically the first lesson, it's just one picking exercise and then one chord, not whatever they manage in 10 minutes and then whatever they manage in 10 minutes. Focus more on the chords. If you have more time, don't give them loads.
Yeah, yeah. And look, in that intro, you do want to try and introduce all the things. The way the intro works, just to really give you the breakdown on it, is that your first lesson, you've got really, you can cover most of the skills in 3 weeks, and then you've got 2 spare weeks. So, but covering them in 3 weeks, yeah, it is a bit cramped. You're going to be sort of pushing to get through everything and explain everything, especially when questions come up and you're also trying to make a connection with the student and all that. So one of the things that I suggest for teachers who are new to the game is that maybe do longer lessons for your intro lessons. Don't book someone after it. Book an hour for every new student when you begin, and that way you can run the lessons over if you need to, because it's not really about the student, it's about you as a teacher. It's about you getting used to delivering. Think about like a chef opening a restaurant and cooking the meals, and people are waiting an hour for their meal to be cooked, and it's because the chef just hasn't had enough experience getting the meals cooked in 20 minutes. The meals can be cooked in 20 minutes, but the chef hasn't really got their sort of program down yet to get it organised. And what you do is you'll start looking at your teaching and you'll see, wow, I just wasted 20 seconds there, or I went too long answering that question. I could have answered the question quicker, or that question was really irrelevant. The student got off track and we started talking about something completely different. So you start to see that. Sorry, what's that?
That's definitely my 3 main ones.
Yeah.
I need to not get talking about theory. If anyone asks me any questions about theory, I'm like, I love theory. Let's go for the next hour. Whoops.
Yeah.
Well, fact, literally, one of my lessons, I did go for an hour, and I looked up and I was like, I've just been talking for half an hour. I'm glad that you are the last lesson today, and that you're the student who already knew a lot of stuff, so it wasn't entirely over their head. But
yeah,
I'm really trying to clamp down on my lesson times because I was going over by 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I think I will keep doing that, but I'll let them know and tell them it's going to be a 45-minute lesson for the first 3 of the 5, or maybe for the first 5, just to get that pattern going. And I don't think it's that I'm teaching it slower. I think it's that I'm allowing too many questions. So if they ask a question, fine, answer it, but don't elaborate and don't let them ask another question. If they ask one and you answer it, and that sparks another question, just say, we'll get to that in a bit. We just need to finish this first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it can be, like it's great that they're asking questions because it means they're curious and they want to know things. That's fantastic. But we know that the questions that need to know are really going to get answered in the program. And the other questions they have. What I do is that I will sometimes, if they've got questions, or this is what I used to do, is if they have questions, I say, just remember that question for me because I'm going to come back to it at the end of the class. Because I just want to get through this now, but we'll come back to your questions in the class. So you say, look, I'm going to come back to your questions, and a lot of the time you get to the end of the class and they don't ask the questions. The question was just a fleeting question that they really wasn't that important.
If it's definitely use that.
Yeah, and that way you're not saying, look, don't ask me questions. Just saying, sure, I want to ask you a question, but we'll do it at the end. And that way you make time for it. And I would say that when I start a group, I even do it in these sessions, as you see. I'll say, has anyone got any questions? I'll sort of give you a chance at the beginning to present a question or whatever. And that way, if I can see, okay, this is a question I can't answer in 30 seconds, I will put it off until another time.
Sounds good.
Yeah. You learn all these little strategies as you go, and when you're in the beginning part of it, you expect things to take longer because you're learning how to do it. It's like learning a song. You got to play it slowly first. You got to go through the song and then put all the parts together, and eventually it comes together, and then you get it up to speed, and then you can play them faster than the tempo. And that's the same as your lessons. You'll get to a point where you'll just be able to wrap through your lessons, and you'll go, wow, we've got 5 minutes to spare, and we've covered everything. And that's what starts to happen. It
There's
really,
more time for connection there.
yeah, yeah. And look, people would say, and they'd say it because this is what I intended, but they would say to me, you know, if they'd been to other classes or had private teachers or whatever, they'd come out of the classes after half an hour and go, I used to have private, you know, hour lessons, and I just got, you know, twice as much out of that lesson than I would normally have got out of an hour lesson. And they're pumped and they feel good and they go home and practice, and you get all these sort of elements of the group. And that's often people say to me, you know, oh, the lesson's only half an hour, you know, and you've got 5 in a group and you're charging that much, you know, it looks like you're earning $250 an hour, then, you know, that seems quite expensive, blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, wait till you try them. Wait till you try my classes and then decide. You'll see what you'll learn is a lot more in a shorter period of time, and so you're not spending any more money. You're actually probably spending less than you would at a private teacher, but you're going to get a lot more out of it, and you're going to learn a lot faster. And that's really what it's about. That's giving them the value, because it's all about leveraging. People are sort of thinking, well, I'm hiring this teacher by the hour. No, you're not hiring him by the hour. You're hiring on quality. You're hiring on getting a result.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. If
all
yeah.
the work has been put into the method, you can say the reason things happen quicker is because we've got a good structure that works. So following a good structure means that you will get the results, and that structure didn't come about overnight. We had to work on it, so
Exactly.
you're paying for that.
You go to 2 mechanics, right, with your car, and one mechanic says, you know, I charge $100 an hour, and the other mechanic says I charge $50 an hour. And you say to the $100 an hour mechanic, how long does it take to fix? And they say an hour. And then you go to the $50 an hour mechanic, how long does it take to fix? And
2 days.
They say, I don't know. It might take all day. I can't give you a time. Who are you going to go to? That's right. You're going to go to the guy who charges $100 an hour. He's going to fix it in an hour. You know it's going to cost $100. You go to the other guy's $50 an hour. You don't know how long. And people make that mistake all the time. They go to the guy who's cheaper by the hour. But he might take a lot longer or just not do a very good job. You know, go to the person who gives you the best value, who's going to give you the best result. And that's what we're saying is go to the private teacher who charges more per hour and gives you the one-on-one time, whatever, blah, 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 or come here and have this experience. And I'm not saying that we're better than everybody, because we're clearly not. There's people out there who are probably brilliant private teachers, and that's great. But I'm telling you what we do, and compared to most teachers, yeah, you're going to get a lot better value, because I don't know anyone who's going to the lengths that we do. We're a network of teachers who are inputting from all different angles, so it's very hard to compete with when you've got a network of 50 odd teachers all contributing ideas and bouncing off each other.
Awake around the clock.
What's that?
We're awake around the clock with the network.
Yes, yes. So sorry, just to sort of conclude here on this point of teaching your first class. Trevor, is there anything that you want to ask at this point that you feel?
Can you hear me okay now?
Yep.
Yep. Oh, okay. It's 2 quick questions really, which they're not in. They're sort of ones I had from earlier on that I just wrote down. You mentioned about getting the parents involved, and I know you said that it was it sort of Japanese students that you said who seemed to progress a lot faster than other groups, and it turned out to be the level of parental involvement. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, it's Asian students as a general thing, and some people don't like when we say this because it sounds almost racist, but it's not racist. It's based on the fact that their culture, as Jay is quite aware of. Jay comes from the Philippines, so he understands this, and I've spent a lot of time in Japan, and my wife's Japanese, so I do understand these cultures. Plus, I've taught a lot of Asian children, and their parents are it's just their culture. Their parents almost feel obligated. When I think of my wife, she's always takes me everywhere. She's always got to be there. She won't leave me with a teacher by herself ever, except at school. But she's really, at home, she's doing all her homework with her. She's working with her every day. So if Mia's learning anything, she will never leave it up to Mia to do by herself. She will do it with it. And maybe that's a bit of overkill. Maybe in some cases their cultures go to the extreme. But the answer to that, the short answer is yes. The Asian parents, the mothers. I'm not saying I don't know about the fathers, but the mothers definitely are very involved with their children and their children's education. So.
Yeah. That's great. Second quick question. Practicing in front of a mirror, I know it's something you always mention. I'm assuming that it's so people don't get into the habit of kind of hunching over the guitar and, to look at what they're playing, and so their posture is that they're sitting up and playing, in a better position. Is that basically just it? Yeah.
That's it, yeah. So you're kind of sitting up, if I have the guitar here, I know you can't quite see me here. I'll just bring it down a bit. But yeah, so if I'm looking, I can see myself here here on the video. So I'm looking here. But if I'm learning and I'm kind of like this, as a lot of practices do, that's really bringing my neck down. And you can talk to any chiropractor and they'll tell you that's really bad news. So up here, I don't have to do that, and I can still see my hand. But the other thing that it does is that it allows me to see from that perspective. So when I'm watching other guitarists, because let's face it, a lot of learning that students do is going to be watching other guitar players, and it's actually, this has again been shown in studies that one of the things about guitar players is we learn visually a lot, and more so than other musicians. Like piano players tend to learn by reading music a lot more than other musicians, or a lot more than guitar players. At least we don't read the music so much. But we look at each other, we look at how does that go, or we'll be watching YouTube videos or watching famous guitar players. So by learning to look at yourself in the mirror, you get that perspective of seeing your fingers from this angle, or somebody else's fingers from that angle. So that's the other bonus to it.
It's amazing the number of guitar players you see on stage who just have that, kind of hunched over the guitar, looking at their fingers all the time, sort of posture, isn't it? And it doesn't look so good.
No, it doesn't look good. Again, let me use Kiss as an example. Look at Gene Simmons. He doesn't hunch. He's always up. Really, he's looking straight out at the audience with the whole attitude thing going on.
Yeah.
Ben?
I was just going to say there's one other thing I say with the mirror. I mentioned the video game example to describe it, but it's kind of a second stage out of the three. So instead of that or that, when you're looking directly at your hand, you can see the target spot and the finger and watch them meet. When you're looking through the mirror, you can see that you're on the right fret, but you have to use some touch to work out whether you're directly on the fret or whether you're between, because your hand might be covering the fret, so you can't quite see. So It gives you a middle stage where you're not entirely playing without looking, but you're not literally using your eyes to guide your fingers. You're using your eyes to make your hands in the right place, and then your fingers are feeling whether they're in the right place.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I don't say don't look at your hands. I just say don't always look at your hands. Look at your hands to sort of guide you when you sort of where your fingers should be, but don't constantly be playing by looking at, because you can't look at both hands. That's the problem. This hand, I've got to look here and I've got to look there. It's where you're going to look. And the other thing is that we have an amazing sense of touch. The things that we can do, that we just have this. We're lazy. Humans are basically lazy, and again, there's a reason for that, but I won't go into that because it'll just get me off track. But we're basically lazy, and we do things. Whatever's the easiest way that we can find to do something, we'll do it without thinking about the long-term consequences of whether it's the best way to do things. So if you think about, there are people who can actually type out messages on an iPhone without even looking at the iPhone. They learn to do it because that's what they're trying to do, or they're in an office where the boss is looking at them, so they learn to do it without actually looking down. Whatever the reason is, or they're driving with one hand and learn to do it that way. Whatever the reason is, they learn to do things. You think about driving, you don't look at your feet, where the feet go on the pedals, or where your hands on the gear if you drive a manual like I do. There's a lot of things that you do with your hands which don't require you to be looking at your hands to do that, and a lot of fine motor skills. where you can do that. So, plenty of people can type without looking at their hands, of course. So this is something, a skill, which if they learn, it'll free them up to keep their eyes forward, not only for good posture, but also to be able to connect with the audience. So, yep. Any other questions, Trevor? Is that pretty well covered?
Yeah, no, that's fine, thanks. That's it.
Okay. Excellent. Jay, have you got any other questions you want to throw in?
Nothing that I can think of at the moment.
Okay, cool. All right, I've just got a couple of minutes now. We'll just go for another 4 or 5 minutes. But what I'll do is because I've got you guys here who, Jay's been around for a little while, but Ben, you're still fairly fresh, and Trevor, you're right off very new. So what I want to do is just give you a little bit of kind of inspiration into the long-term vision of your business and why you should think about your business long-term and not short-term. And the short-term thinking is often a trap, where you're thinking from week to week, month to month, rather than thinking of the long-term plan of it. One of the main differences with business, opposed to, say, working in a job, is a job gives you a steady income week by week by week. And you might get pay rises if you're really good, and you might get a bonus at Christmas and a few things like this along the way. But you're not actually building anything significant within a job. And this is one of the big differences with businesses, is that there's a kind of a curve that's almost like a linear line with a job, but it's very kind of slight like that, where you start here maybe on in the UK, maybe you start on £30,000 a year or whatever, £20,000. I'm not sure what you start on in a normal job, but over the years it goes up, and it tends to really just go up with inflation. In some cases, if you get sort of good sort of managerial positions and whatever, you might go up higher than inflation. But a general job, if you stayed in that same sort of basic job, you would really just go with inflation. The difference with a business is you start down sort of very lower than most jobs. In other words, you're not going to earn, in your first year, you can expect to earn less than a job. If you earn as much as a job in your first year of business, then well done, fantastic. But it's usually not going to happen. They say it takes 3 years to profit in a business. So the first year is you actually lose money. The second year, you break even. And then the third year, you start to make money. But what happens is after that third year, it just keeps going up and going up and going up. And you get almost this kind of exponential curve, where your income is going to really go up as you sort of progress. Because if you think about it, when you are successful at teaching, let's just start on a small scale. If you start with your marketing, when you begin your marketing, you go out and do your flyers, for instance, or any other marketing. That marketing actually lasts for years. It doesn't seem like it at the time, and it doesn't seem that the value is a long-term value. But if you go out and you did 20,000 flyers, for instance, or spend $10,000 on Facebook ads, you have got into the minds of people in your area. Now, whether they're ready to respond there and then is another thing. Some of them will, most of them won't. But what happens is, as you do marketing further down the line, then that builds up. So when somebody sees, say, the Coke brand, an advertisement for any well-known brand, Apple, Microsoft, etc., those brands are already well known. So when they place an ad, the ad has a lot more impact than if it was, Joe's Computers or Mary's new soft drink. They don't have the impact because nobody knows the brand. I've never heard of the brand. But when you know the brand, you're immediately drawing up all your past marketing efforts as well. So that's the marketing. But then if you look at the other things that come into it, such as selling, your ability to enroll students, convert students, you only get better. You don't get worse. It's just the way it is. You don't get, your sales skills just don't get worse. The more you do it, the better you get. It's like playing guitar. So with every inquiry, you're going to get better and better and better. So if you're enrolling 50% now, which is really, the kind of I consider the worst end of the scale, then in maybe 6 months it goes to 65%, 70%, and then another 6 months it goes to sort of 75, 80%, and then you start to creep up closer to 90%, and then you get to those points where it's half a percentage point. You go to 90%, 90.5%, or 91%. So, and then you have those months which, I had every now and again where you go every inquiry you enroll. You just have like 100% and go, wow, what a great month that was. Every single inquiry. And so that's what happens as you progress, and that's really year 3, maybe year 4. The 100%ers, by the way, that did happen to me early on. That probably took 5 or 6 years before I started getting anywhere near that. But you guys are on the fast track, so you're learning much faster if you're doing the role plays with Emma, if you're listening to the audios, and you're practicing as well. It's really important to do the rehearsal. So that's the sales, and then the next level obviously is the teaching. And as you improve and get better at the teaching, especially at the group teaching, you're going to just get better and better, and you're going to do larger and larger groups. And even though we sort of got this model of 5 in a group for half an hour, which is great, and which is what I kind of really would recommend you stick to anyway. When I say larger groups, I'm talking about workshops. So you then start to do workshops where I was doing workshops of up to 50 people at a time, and you can be bigger. You can be doing 100 at a time, 1,000 at a time, whatever. There is really no limit. It's just how good you are at presenting, how many people you can actually get up in front of. And with the world and the internet and everything happening today, there really is a lot of possibility for what you can achieve. So when you think of it in those terms, then whatever you're doing today is really just the beginning. And what's going to happen for the next year, the next 2 years, is still the very low end of the curve. And then it starts to pick up for you. And then you're going to, as you grow more and more, clients and students and influence, it's just going to keep increasing for you. So that's why I want you to think of your business in kind of the long term, and not be selling out in the short term. And this is where a lot of guys sell out in the short term. In other words, Jeff actually made a good sort of comment in his, where he'd taken on 2 students who were shift workers. He put comments in the Facebook, he'd taken them on, and he kind of half knew he shouldn't really do it, but he was thinking, wow, I don't want to lose out on the money. I've gone and done the flyers. These guys are going to pay me for the intro, so I'm going to get some money up front, So he kind of, but then he had to go through that kind of disappointment of them saying, look, we're not continuing on, or they're sort of going back and forth about trying to make times, whatever. Because I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I never liked losing students. It was never something that I wanted, that I felt good about. Even under the best of circumstances, I still didn't like it. So it's better not to put yourself in a situation where you're going to lose students. Try and focus on students that you're going to, that you're going to keep for a long time, and then you're really going to be able to do good things with, and then you're going to be able to graduate them. In other words, you're going to get them to the end of the G4 program, and then say, dude, you've done your last certificate, or you can take them onto exams or whatever if you like after that. But knowing that you've taken them through the full course, it's very satisfying. And then you can say to them, look, it's time for you to go on and get some private lessons, or go on to Berkeley or the Institute, or whatever. So that if you have that long-term perspective and look at every student as a long-term student, and how you can tell, and I'm not talking about rejecting students, I'm talking about the way that you communicate with them, the things that you say to them. And in other words, don't compromise. Really try not to compromise as much as possible. Sometimes students need a little bit of work to bring them online. Other students, it's like here with the G4 network, some guys are completely afraid of franchise. I don't want to be a franchise. It's like $100,000 and 10-year contract and all the rest of it. No, I don't want any of that. So it's like, well, just come in and have a look, buy the pack, come in for 30 days, check it out, see what we're all about. You'll see that there's no contract. You'll see that it's not what you think it is. I'm not asking you to pay $100,000 up front. I'm just, we're doing something here that we think is unique and special, and that you will benefit from. So have a look, and that's the same with you guys with the intro. Yeah, have a look, but also be very upfront and clear about where it's going. No, there are no private lessons after the 5-week intro. Yes, this is about getting you to join a group and going beyond there. Yes, I absolutely am confident that you will be a successful guitar player if you follow the program, but I'm not here to cater for you personally for what you want. I've got a program that will work, but it's up to you to follow the program. So, does that all make sense? Does anyone else have any questions that they want to throw in? Ben, yeah.
Just a minor one. I think you might have mentioned it already, but when you were doing the workshops with 50 to 100 people, were they in your studio, or did you have to rent somewhere out for that?
Yeah, we had a big room. What I did is in my first studio in Sydney, in Northbridge, the room wasn't big enough. We could only do, probably 10 at a time at the most. And then there was a bigger room, and they used to do fitness classes. It was like a gym, actually, they used to do aerobics classes. So we actually took that big room, and we divided it into 3 rooms, but we kept one room big. We had one small room, a waiting area, which was like a long room, and then we had a big front room. And in there, we were able to sort of squeeze in. I didn't actually do 50 students in there because that room only held 30 at the most. But I had another school prior to G4 where I did a couple of workshops where we had around 50. It was probably 45 to 50. That was the most that I ever did in that thing. Yeah. So.
But you would consider getting out somewhere if you've got a lot of students, but you've got, say, 10 groups of 5, and you can only have 5 in your studio. Because I'm not going to fit 10 in here.
Yeah, you've got to. When you get to the next stage of where you're going to do workshops and larger workshops, then you need the space. You need somewhere where you can cater for that number.
So either rent or wait for a commercial location.
Yeah, that's right. And remember, workshops, when you start doing these and you're doing bigger numbers, it's not so they're going to learn stuff, but you've got to be really well prepared. You've got to be able to give them, handouts, maybe have a follow-up email, have a video that they can go to after. And the live experience is a bit like a concert. If you want to hear a band at its best, just sit at home with a really good stereo or set of headphones and you'll hear studio quality, everything, wonderful. Go to a sort of a full stadium concert. I went and saw the Rolling Stones in Vancouver, and there was like 80,000 people there or something, and there was a delay between them and the sound, and it was just horrible. But the atmosphere was fantastic. It was just the atmosphere, and there was the guy I was backpacking. This was years ago, and the guy there, an English guy, he said he's going to it, and I said, all right, let's go. It sounds like fun, and we went. And yeah, the music was terrible because the distance was so bad, but the actual experience was huge. Just being in a room with an auditorium with so many people. So when you teach and you've got guitar and you've got that vibe, remember that's a lot of what it is. It's that vibe of coming together with lots of other people, the energy of the room, and really getting them excited and pumped. So you got to, again, it's a performance. You've got to put on a great performance, and never underestimate that. Never underestimate the value of the performance to inspire people to want to play guitar, to want to practice, to want to go and do better things. And you see it everywhere, whether it's in business, whether it's in religion, whether it's in the arts, everywhere. The performance, the inspiration behind speaking. Politicians do it all the time. People vote for performances of politicians, not for their policies. And it's almost laughable how somebody do a great performance, a great speech, and win a vote. Churchill was the greatest of all. Churchill would get up and inspire the whole country to get up and not feel sorry for themselves. Let's go, let's do it. We can win this. Yeah. Coaches of football teams, they're performers. They get up in front of their team and they say, "You can do it. You can win. We can do this." It might never matter. Sure, those guys are faster, bigger, and they've won every trophy for the last 25 years. But you guys, this is your night. This is your chance. You got here. You got this far. Tonight, you can do it. And they go, "Yes, we can do it. We can do it." And they go out and they do it. And that happens all the time. All right. We're done, I think. So thanks, guys. Thanks for dropping by. This, just as an experiment tonight, this is the first time I've actually sent out a link to some of the people on my mailing list, only some, just a handful, so they could jump in and view it. And we've had 4 viewers, I've noticed, watching. So this might turn into something big. When we're talking about bigger crowds, these particular presentations might turn into something pretty interesting. And it's good to have people who are just viewing, who are stepping in. So we're talking, we're discussing, and other people from around the world can tune in to G4 Guitar TV. Sounds like the name of it. Okay, guys, thanks again.
Next time.
What's that?
Have to put our makeup on next time then.
Next time, yes. Exactly. Bring your kiss suits next time, Trevor. You can dress up like Jane. Ace Frehley.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Trevor.
All right, guys. Thanks again.
Bye,
I
David.
look forward to seeing you next one. Thanks, Jay.
See you
Thanks,
guys. See
Trevor.
you, Jay. See you, Jay.
Thanks. Cheers. Bye bye.